Katie Scruggs, and I am for the resolution. The government has the responsibility to bridge the economic gap between its rich and poor citizens. The central purpose of a government is to promote the well-being of its citizens. When the economic gap becomes too large, the conditions for a society that is stable weaken. Therefore, the government should take responsibility. Definitions. Economic inequality. Economic inequality is the unequal distribution of income and opportunity between different groups in society. Source, www.apa.org. Responsibility. The state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or having control over someone. Source, Oxford English Dictionary. My value is quality of life. Quality of life refers to the level of well-being, opportunity, and stability experienced by the individuals in society. My criterion is maximizing societal welfare. This standard determines whether the government increases its overall well-being and safety for the greatest number of people. Quality of life improves when a society as a whole functions well. Policies that reduce inequality allow access to education, healthcare, and housing, which are central components of a societal welfare. Because bridging the economic gap raises these conditions for most people, this criterion best upholds its value. Contention 1. Bridging the economic gap has been proven to work. Quote, in 2017, government programs lifted nearly 40 million Americans out of poverty, including 8.8 million children, 12.7 million adults aged 18 to 64, and 17.7 million seniors. Programs such as Social Security, SNAP, Supplemental Security Income, and Temporary Assistance for Needy Families play a critical role in reducing poverty across all race and communities. Source, ethnicities.www.cbpp.org. While small organizations will help, the government needs to apply itself to help continue to bridge the gap. Research constantly shows that when the government invests in poverty reduction programs, it reduces long-term inequality. Assistance programs lead to better health outcomes, higher graduation rates, and increased lifetime earnings for children who grow up in low-income households. By lifting families above the poverty line, the government strengthens the overall economy because people are more able to purchase goods, pay taxes, and participate fully in society. While community organizations can offer targeted support, only the government has the resources, reach, and infrastructure to reduce poverty at a national level and close the economic gap. Contention 2. The government is uniquely capable of reducing inequality. Only the government has tools to create nationwide economic fairness. While also helping provide for the poor, the government can also take responsibility by adjusting the tax depending on the income of individual citizens. Using the federal government supplemental poverty measure, the Congressional Research Service estimates that under current law, the income tax reduced total poverty by 15%, from 14.7% of individuals in poverty to 12% of individuals. Source, www.congress.gov. While the government is applying itself to the issue, there is always room for improvement, and they can continue to lessen the income tax on the poor and expand the tax on the rich. Contention 3. Reducing the economic gap improves basic living conditions. Economic inequality limits access to healthcare, education, transportation, and housing. When the government reduces the gap through public programs, minimum wage laws, and tax policies, more citizens can meet basic needs. Quote, the findings reveal that the odds of a lack of health insurance and unaffordably need medical care were over twofold higher among individuals with lower education compared to those with higher education, following the different time trends. Moreover, elevated mortality risk was associated with lower education up to 77%, uninsurance 17%, unaffordability 43%, and delayed care 12%. Uninsurance and unaffordability accounted for 4 to 6% of the disparities in time to mortality between low and high education groups. Source, pubmed.ncipi.gov. Conclusion. I affirm the resolution. By improving basic living conditions, strengthening society, and using tools that only the government possesses, bridging the economic gap best fulfills the government's responsibility to enhance the quality of life as a nation. When the government narrows the gap, the whole nation moves forward. I'm now ready for cross-examination.
Can you repeat your constructive number 2? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. The government is uniquely capable of reducing inequality. Let me read the quote.
No, that's fine. When you meant we're talking about bridging the economic gap.
Yeah.
Did you define how we would go about that?
Yes, by continuing with the programs in communities, but also using the government to lessen the taxing on the poor and then increasing the tax on the rich.
Okay. So when we're talking about bridging the gap between the poor citizens and the rich citizens, you want to take away the money from the rich citizens and give it to the poor?
Not necessarily. When taxing the rich, that money will go towards funding housing for poor, transportation, and all things that we need for basic living.
Okay. How do you think bridging that gap would affect the economy?
Well, if more people are able to live in a basic environment, then more people are able to vote, and then also earn a higher education, which can just help America overall economy-wise. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all. Thank you.
Can I have 45 seconds?
Yep.
That's 45. Okay, that's great. Can I have another 3?
All right, that's your 30. Are the judges ready? Time ready? Begin. Quote, the case for socialism is always made based on an ideal and a promise. The ideal is that humans can lovingly coexist in a sharing and peaceful way. The promise is that this time, unlike failed attempts elsewhere, socialism will be implemented properly, and no citizen will suffer as a result. End quote. Charlie Kirk, 2024. Good morning. My name is Nathaniel Dewar, and I stand firmly against the resolution that the government has an obligation to lessen the economic gap between its rich and poor citizens. I accept the affirmative definitions and define the following key terms. Obligation, a moral or legal duty that must be fulfilled, Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Lessen the economic gap, deliberate policy to reduce income/wealth inequality, example, progressive taxation, wealth taxes, etc. American Psychological Association.org. Marginal tax rate. The marginal tax rate is the amount of additional tax paid for every additional dollar earned as income. The average tax rate is the total paid dividend by total income earned. A 10% marginal tax means that 10 cents of every dollar earned would be taken as tax. TaxFoundation.org. Negative rights. Freedoms from interference by others, particularly the government, requiring others to abstain from certain actions rather than requiring them to provide a good or service. OxfordReference.org. My value is liberty, defined as control over one's life and control of rightfully acquired property. criterion is the protection of negative rights. Because the resolution demands coercive redistribution of legitimately earned wealth, it necessarily violates negative rights. Unless the affirmative can prove a positive duty to equalize outcomes overrides the fundamental right to be left alone, liberty is upheld and the negative must prevail. The resolution assumes extreme inequality is inherently unjust and must be fixed by government. That assumption is false. Income and wealth gaps are the natural result of freedom, risk-taking, and differences in talent and choices. A government's legitimate role is to protect equal rights and opportunity, not to guarantee equal bank accounts. Contention 1. There is no moral or legal obligation for the government to lessen the gap between rich and poor citizens that exists. Quote, there is no internationally recognized human right to particular distribution of income. The Constitution, no binding treaty, no major philosopher from Locke to Rawls says governments are required to make people more equal in outcome. They must choose to fight poverty. That isn't permission. Forcing equality of result is not obligation. To claim that our government has the obligation is unconstitutional. Contention 2. Forcing the gap smaller destroys incentives and growth. When governments try to shrink the gap with ultra-high taxes on success, the rich work less, invest less, or simply leave, and the whole economy shrinks. For example, Sweden in the 1970s to 80s had top marginal rates routinely over 80%. IKEA's founder fled to Switzerland. Astrid Lindgren paid 102% on some income and wrote a satire that toppled the government. Sweden fixed it by slashing top rates from 87% to below 50 to 57% today, and abolishing the wealth tax in 2007. Quote, when marginal tax rates exceed 70%, the behavioral response becomes so large that tax revenue actually fails. We learned this the hard way in the 1980s. Wall Street Journal, 2020. Another example is Britain in the 1970s. They had top rate 83% on earned income and 98% on investment income. The result was doctors and engineers immigrated, rolling blackouts, and a 3-day work week. Quote, many simply left the country or stopped working. The result was a collapse in tax revenue and economic stagnation. Institute of Economic Affairs, 2022. As history proves, taking away the rich's income just takes away national income, therefore harming society more than it helps. The affirmative contention was that throughout history, taking away money from the rich and giving it to the poor has been proven to work. As I've just established, throughout multiple examples of history, it does not work. The negative stated that the government is best suited for helping the poor citizens, and I would disagree. I think there's easier ways to help the poor, i.e. Churches and charities. I think it's more in the church's role to help the poor than the government's. The affirmative contention 3 was that it improves quality of life, which, as I've proved in both of my original contentions, that it just affects the economy in a negative way, which affects the quality of life. Because no moral or legal obligation even exists, forcing the gap smaller with punishing the rich destroys the engine of prosperity that actually lifts everyone. I strongly urge the judges to vote against the resolution. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Yeah, 30 seconds. is more just than allowing the impoverished to lose health care and a safe form of living?
I believe in fairness of keeping your own income and being able to make yourself as an American. And I think that's what America's about, is being able to work hard for what you want.
Can you please restate your definition of socialism?
I didn't define socialism.
Are you aware that there are organizations in place to help lessen the gap? And churches and charities, are you aware that those are in place right now?
I'm aware they exist, but I think they definitely could be improved upon, and I think our resources could be put towards those things. Like, as if a person really thinks we need to help the poor, they could go and work hard and donate their wealth to these charities in order to help the poor, instead of forcing everybody who wants to just keep their own money to give away their money to the poor.
And people do have those opportunities today to go donate and work, but with what we have now, these charities and churches aren't sufficing. Do you think that there are other ways to help through those?
Yeah, I think that yes, those things exist, like I said, but I think as a society we've begun to rely on the government and rely on these welfare checks, when us as a society should, as we become more and more as a Christ-centered society, we should be more generous and give more to these organizations, and we should be able to, as a society, continue to improve, and if it's really important to us, that's what will happen.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
I think you have 2 minutes left.
I just want.
That's 1 minute.
Negative 2?
Yep.
Okay. The negative side argue that we have organizations and charities to help lessen the gap, and while these organizations are helpful to the citizens, even with the government should apply themselves to help these organizations in whatever way they can. At the degree that they're at now, it's not going to make as much of a difference as it could. And the negative team also stated that taxing the rich would be unfair, and I disagree, because if you are willing to apply yourself to a community or to an organization or charity, I feel like that we should all have that moral responsibility, and unfortunately not everybody does. So by including taxing the rich, then that it does enforce that that responsibility onto them, and we do that through the government alone. We can't use an organization to tax them. And that's all I have.
guys ready? Timer ready? Begin. So, my 2 points that I have already stated are that there is no moral or legal obligation for the government to lessen the gap between its rich and poor citizens. That exists. I then brought in evidence to show that this is by doing what the negative positive side has proposed. That's clearly unconstitutional. And then my second contention is forcing the gap smaller destroys incentives and growth. When governments try to shrink the gap with ultra-high taxes on success, the rich work less, invest less, or simply leave, and the whole economy shrinks. So all that the affirmative has proposed has either been proven factually wrong, or there are other solutions. To repeat my quote on the economy, quote, many simply left the country or stopped working. The result was a collapse in tax revenue and economic stagnation. This is talking about when Britain installed these progressive taxation. And there's other things that I also proposed, saying that by integrating what the affirmative has proposed affects the economy in a very negative way. The negative's value and criterion is quality of life. By doing the plan that she's proposed, it'll actually harm much more people by having such a bad impact on the economy, and will just thereby just not even complete her value that she's aiming for. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Even with the negative side argued that the charities and churches are going to be the best way to go about solving the gap, and poverty is increasing tremendously, and the gap has been the worst it's ever been in the past 50 years. And these organizations cannot keep up by themselves. They need some sort of backbone to support them, and the best way to do this would be through the government. The government has the resources and the people to help provide in that way, and also through the taxing, as I have stated. My value is quality of life. It's the government's obligation to level out the gap, to improve the quality of life for all of its citizens. Without this, we as a society are going to fail in every way, through education, healthcare, and just in every way we live. Therefore, I urge the judges to vote for the resolution. The United States government has a responsibility to bridge the economic gap between its rich and poor citizens. Thank you.
Judges, a few minutes. Do you want me to leave it on for? I think we'll about it. Okay, I'll just leave it on. Okay. Can you? Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, here's I need a glass.
Hey, I can get you protein.
Sadie, can I ask a point of clarity? Because I may have missed it when you were giving your opening. What were your criteria?
Maximizing societal welfare.
This is just the one?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I have my 3 contentions.
And what was your value?
Quality of life.
Okay.
You added it I missed your value in your opening. Again, that may have been on me, not listening, but you
I caught it, so.
you had it, okay. But you reaffirmed it at the end, so I appreciate you did.
So I did it, when I prepared, I did it all with team policy, and I realized it's not team policy, so I like tried to convert it to Lincoln Douglas.
You would have wanted to go hard about doing that.
You
That was
should have stayed hard, instead.
that was too much.
Yeah, you should have like started poking him.
Just tackle it.
Stabbing each other. Sorry, go ahead. Do you wanna go home? You know, happy birthday. Oh, God. Yeah, sure.
It's not law.
I had to talk about the charity, and like I had it written on my page, right at the top, talk about charity. I just forgot to talk about it in my forgot so. Just make Elon Musk pay for everything.
Yeah, Elon Musk could literally pay for like everything. You know,
No, actually,
like donations.
You know,
actually, I'm gonna say, there's one, I think it's no. Facebook asked me.
oh, Mark Zuckerberg.
He doesn't pay, he doesn't pay taxes on the way that he makes
Yeah, well, we can do like a lot of things to do with it. I don't think that's talking about what we want. It's a little bit off topic. But it could have been. Yeah. I brought it up in my firm. Yeah. But it's like, how is it Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk don't get anything back? They could literally pay for every single sport. It's all.
Elon Musk installed the Honda.
For 12 years.
Did I tell you that?
If I were to compare it to the
Oh wait, no, that's what it is. Well, not for Honda, it's cheap.
I'm betting on Caleb. What time do you?
That's so depressing, bro.
I asked her for the affirmative case so I could prepare negative points. She was like,
You guys
prepare your own points. I was like, okay.
Well, I worked hard on it.
I just wanted to prepare negative points.
She doesn't want to copy.
Yeah, I didn't want to copy it.
I literally told you, I just want to prepare points. You're like, oh.
I think you're taking.
You were getting
messages
cheated
on.
I am not done. This is the exact tone you use.
Bro, it's a
It's a
message.
Yeah, over
message.
10. Yeah, she went
Well, I thought his-
over 10.
No, he says, hey, are you affirmative for debate?
Luca,
Yeah.
what's your zip code?
32461.
Why is it
Because I live in Oranges. Waterstown has a different one than Zimmerman.
interesting?
Yeah, it's just slightly different. Because it's like technically a different county. I think.
Yeah.
I could eat a.
Is
I
it?
saw something.
I think so. I think we're not in Walton County.
You're in the
We're-
beginning of Bay County?
I think so. I'm not sure. I just know it's slightly different. I think it's like a number.
Are we in Walton County?
We're in Walton.
Yes.
Oh, are we in San Jose?
We're in the best.
Yeah, Santa Rosa Beach is it?
I think I'm still in Walton County. I just
Yeah.
think I'm in a different like. I'm not sure.
You idiot.
You might be considered part of Inlet Beach, which I think is a different
Yeah, I am.
municipality
I am
than
in
Santa
the
Rosa
beach.
Beach.
That's what it is.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Cause I don't think you're in
Alright.
Bay County.
Alright, we're gonna,
Because we still
Offer
have the
results.
Walton County's like sheriffs over there.
Yeah.
round 3.
Awesome.
Excellent, good job, well done. Nate, we saw that you took our feedback and pulled your hands out of your pockets.
For most of it.
I caught myself a few
Yeah.
times.
You also intentionally made eye contact a couple of times, I saw you work on that. Obviously you had, you know, the other side, well, arguably the easier side to argue this time. You were well prepared, you had good data, especially how you approached it from an economics perspective and the overall economics of the nation and what happens if you raise taxes. Both of you stayed on point with your argument. You didn't wander, you didn't get off into something else or debating something else. You stuck with it, and the economic angle, I think, is the strongest one that I've heard so far, in terms of why we shouldn't pass this resolution. Pulling in from Sweden, I like that example because everybody uses the Nordic countries as an example of some sort of bliss, where everybody's taken care of, everybody's well educated, everybody's, it's
And they pay
supposedly
high taxes
heaven.
and it's great.
Nobody pays tax, yeah.
They
It's-
pay great high taxes,
Yeah.
but it all works out.
Right, so it's kind of always presented as a utopia, and you pop that bubble, and that was great. Really good example. Also, no moral or legal obligation, that was a really good one too, because that's just unequivocally true, So you had very strong, rebuttals, very strong, even criterion, or what are those called?
Contention.
Contentions, thank you. This is hard brain work, you guys.
Yeah.
So I get a little mixed up by the end, I'm kinda like, what are the words?
Yeah.
And Sadie, I love your demeanor, and you're confident in standing up, you're a very peaceful debate partner. You can assert yourself, a bit more, and I think it would give you more confidence if you asserted yourself. You would feel, you'd enjoy it more. Remember when I talked about this? Yeah. So, that itself just gives you the opportunity to look and see how your argument is landing. Because you have a good orderly argument. Everything was in order, everything was properly said, it was properly laid out, good rebuttals, standing on what you've written. And, I don't wanna say weaponizing it, but slightly. Graciously, you have an incredible grace about you and gracious way of working with your partner. You can be more direct in calling out their weaknesses, because it would never be perceived as being mean or rude. Yeah, I can't imagine anybody ever saying that about you. So yeah, I thought that you guys did a very good job. It was, I think you made an extra effort to be calm and to be gracious towards one another, and we want to acknowledge that, and also a good quality of research. You were both very well prepared.
Yeah, great job. Sadie, you seem very comfortable up there debating. It's probably not ever comfortable, but you present yourself as you're in your element. And I would agree with Ms. Anna is that you can add a little more weight to your presentation and it not come across aggressive. So don't be shy with that, because you did have some good arguments. I felt like, and again, it may be because of the previous, I felt like the cross-examinations were a little soft. From both sides, just probably because you're trying to not overstep, and so that's a balance, and you'll learn how to, where that balance is. The other thing I would say with cross-examinations, and you may be attempting this, and I've kind of noticed it with some of the other debates, is there should always be kind of a point to where you're leading them, not just asking random questions about what they said, but like drawing them into some place so that you can then, kind of drop the hammer and say, okay, here's where your argument. I felt like you asked some questions, but I didn't see the connection to them on both sides of like, yeah, it was a decent question, but where are we going with it? And so I would say when you're listening to that and you're preparing for your cross, figure out what you want to take apart and or what you want to undermine, and then lead them towards that with those questions. I think you both were pretty organized. Your evidence was good. The rebuttal speeches were, I felt again, where maybe you could have really doubled down on some things, and maybe just missed the opportunity. But yeah, overall, I think you guys did a good job with it, and you know, I think Nate, you probably have a little bit of an advantage doing both sides. While it is more work to prepare, it really does help you think about counter arguments and I could see even with from your affirmative, your negative was almost built to counter your own affirmative, which is what is one of the benefits of doing it that way. And so I think your presentation was a little stronger just because, again, probably because of that, but they're good arguments. It's a good way to, I like how you emphasize providing definitions about what the resolution is, right? Defining, because each one of us can read that and think of something on a scale of what that may be talking about. You providing those definitions helps get us all to the same point to say this is what I'm debating. And I think you doing that on the negative shifts that advantage. It takes that advantage away from the affirmative because you're now introducing new definitions that the affirmative doesn't have a chance to debate until your cross-examination or your rebuttal. So I thought that was a good tactic. And again, I agree with the negative personally, and so it's always you know that I'm trying to separate myself from what we're doing here. But I think overall, and our agreement is that the negative won the debate. But I think a couple of those minor adjustments would have shifted it because I think he had a good argument and a good presentation all the way through. So, but yeah, overall, just a good job.
I would agree with you saying like my cross it definitely could have been better. I was trying to lead her into saying like, oh, she was saying like it has a great effect on the economy, and I like was trying to lead her and like present my evidence that it really doesn't. But I think she gave an answer that I could have picked apart, but I think I'd asked all my questions I had written down. I could have gone further. I think I just got scared because I didn't have anything else written down, so I just like kind of backed off. You're right. I should have.
Yeah, and so that's a part of, you know, I'm looking at this from my own experience as being in debates, because I've had to do it. They're not Lincoln Douglas where you have all these points. It's really shooting from the hip, right? You get asked a question and you have to just be prepared to do that. And so don't be afraid of relying on that instinct, even if you haven't had a chance to write it out. You can talk a half a second slower to formulate those words as they're coming out, but trust that instinct to kind of be able to respond to what your opponent is saying, because that quick response, that on the move response, actually carries a lot of weight, because it keeps the debate active where it's at. So don't always feel like you have to, if I didn't write it out well, or I didn't write it out before, I can't really formulate that. Just slow down a little bit, formulate that sentence or that question, and then go and see where, you know, you don't want to do that and not know where it's, and kind of get out of hand, but don't be afraid to rely on your instinct in that cross-examination, because it's almost, that's really where the weight and the meat of that is being able to respond back and forth. And so, yeah.
The good news is you guys get to do this again
Yay.
this year. And so, and you know, each class that we do this with, I think we see that your debate skills are improving because we have more like community knowledge about how this is supposed to go. You guys are applying feedback, you hear feedback, from other classes, and I think, I have actually watched you debate, I forgot that. I came and saw you do debate, and that's true, you do have, it's the whole goal of this, right? We have the form, but the whole goal is for you guys to be able to civilly discuss something with someone else and win. That's the whole goal, right? The goal is not for every constructive speech to be perfect, or every cross-examination to be perfect and you to get a perfect score. We want you guys to learn the skill of conversing civilly and winning. And thinking on your feet, right?
Yeah.
Very rarely are you gonna be asked to present a 1AC based on what you believe about something, right? But the form is the same, so great job.
Yeah, and the other thing is to separate from, because I imagine, I mean, we're all red-blooded Americans. Well, most of us. I think there's some Canadians, right? Yeah. And so there's some of this. I didn't mean to start
That was Christian. Anyways.
I didn't mean to start a continental divide there.
You're gonna get him in trouble.
But you may not agree personally with what you're saying, because it may not line up. You're given the affirmative or the negative of whatever the topic is, and so there's a value in being able to separate yourself from it and present it with confidence and present it wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And so I think a little bit. And I don't know your personal beliefs or not. Is that what is a little bit of what it felt like? Was you were having a hard time even personally believing some of what you're saying? Forget that. It's a debate. Like, go full-fledged, wholehearted into it, because you're only you're trying to set up the strongest argument that you can. It doesn't necessarily mean you believe all of it, but you can present it in a way that it appears you do. Right? And I'm not saying that this is, don't be true to who you are, but this is what the assignment is. And so, give it with confidence, give it with as if it was your wholehearted belief, and adding a little bit of that emotion into it helps connect the humanity, to the judges and to the audience, and so don't be afraid of that. Sometimes it can be difficult because you're like, I don't like this topic at all, and this is not what I believe, and so now I'm trying to fight with myself as I write this debate. Yeah. Use that as an asset to help counter argue and strengthen your topics, and then you can present it as this is the best. This is with a spirit of excellence in that this is the best argument that I can come up with, and present it wholeheartedly so that I make it hard for my opponent to pick apart. So anyway.
Double headers over.